The first bill today will be Senate Bill 45 by Senator Foyle. Requires all public schools governing authorities adopt certain policies relative to cameras in certain classrooms by December the 31st of 2022. Senator Fall.
Thank you, Mr.
Let me put you on.
Yeah.
There we go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. This is simply a follow-up to what we did last year as far as law. We passed a bill last year that was signed into law that allows parents to request a camera be put in a self-contained classroom if the parent requests and if there's funding available. And we felt it was important policy because the kids that are in these self-contained classrooms for the most part are nonverbal, cannot advocate for themselves, and it's a way to protect both the kids and the teachers. So we passed the bill. We didn't want to put in an unfunded mandate, and today I'm not here to do that either. I'm not looking to require that. But what we would like to see is some school districts have gone forward and developed policies and others have not, and the parents would like to see the school districts at least develop a policy so when and if funding becomes available, it can be enacted, fairly quickly. So this simply just puts a deadline date to enact the policy. And I do have some amendments, Mr. Chairman, which I think Senator Talbot will offer for me, which basically moves some language around, but once again clarifies that the policy does not have to go into effect until funding is available.
Okay. Can you pass out the amendment and all right, Senator Tarver, office up amendment number 696. Senator Tarbert, would you like to discuss the amendment? Senator.
I'm happy to take it, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman. Once again, what this does, it doesn't change the bill as far as the intent, but it makes it just clear that you don't have to actually put the cameras in, that being the school system, until the funds are available. So that just makes it clear, and that's where we are. So I'd ask for adoption of the amendments. It will put the bill in the proper posture.
All right, Senator Jackson, do you have a question on the amendment or the bill?
Oh, the bill. No, the bill.
All right. Is there any discussion on the amendment? All right, Senator Tarbert moves the adoption of the amendment. Is there any discussion? Any objections to the adoption of the amendment? Hearing no objections, the amendment is adopted. Senator Jackson on the bill.
I want to thank Senator Fall. I know you've been working on this a long time, and I'm a supporter of it. I believe it's necessary.
Thank you.
I believe last time you were before committee with your original bill, we heard stories from parents that were shocking on what was happening. And I think a camera does not at all curtail teaching, but it does protect those parents and those students who are sending their children to school who may not be able to verbalize what happens in school, like some of the other children who can immediately come home. So I'm in support of it, and at the appropriate time, Mr. Chairman, I would move move the motion that we move this bill favorable as amended.
Thank you, Senator Jackson.
All right, Senator Tarbert. All right.
I'll just make a motion to report favorably at the appropriate time.
All right, we have two motions on the floor. All right, we also have who would like to speak. Ms. Catherine Canito and Ms. Jodo Rollins, is that? Yeah. And I apologize. It's not your writing. It's just Audrey Gillian. Present and would like to speak. If the three
Chairman,
of you,
I'll step away from the
Yes,
table,
sir.
but these are the ladies who, among others, who have brought the idea
Bless
and
you.
proposal to me.
if the three of you can come forward and identify yourselves and make your presentation.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Canino, and I'm from St. Tammany Parish. And thank you for allowing us to speak. So we only have a few minutes, so I just wanted to get to the chase. So the schools have had a year to put a policy in place. I stayed on top of St. Tammany Parish to make sure they did it. I did the research, I provided it to them, they did it. But their response to it is they have this policy, but they're not going to do anything with it until the funding is provided. And if parents want it, they're going to give the bill to the parents, they said. But different schools will cost different amounts of money based on what is required to install that camera. That's not fair to parents. Parents of children with disabilities are already facing so much. Our children are required to go to school, and they don't have a choice if they're there. So shouldn't we protect them to the greatest extent possible? They don't have more time to wait to be protected. And on the other thing, I've been advocating ever since what happened to my son happened. And now teachers are reaching out to me. Teachers that, if they were my son's teacher, I wouldn't have even asked for a camera, to be honest. But they're leaving. The teachers are leaving because they said they feel like they're doing more harm than good right now, because they feel like they're socially promoting these children, and they're not, even though St. Tammany got $113 million and has spent $17 million, they're still buying their own supplies for these students. And when they approached administration, they said, well, if you pass 1 out of 35 children, or you help 1 out of 35, you're doing a good job. That was the response. So I feel that the pushback on these cameras is more, not even of the abuse that it would protect these children against, but it's the fate that they are being denied. And every year that goes on, they suffer more. And so I just really feel that they don't have time to wait. And the money is there with the ESSER funding, but they tell parents it's already allocated. So it leaves parents stuck. And I understand, you know, they already have a lot of money, but the parents just get stuck in the middle with no solution. So, and I have reached out to LDO, Louisiana Department of Education, and they haven't made any progress on a funding source yet. So it's just, I ask that you, I don't know if there's some creative solution to help direct that money to those cameras, but I ask that you please be in favor of Senate Bill 45 so that there is a policy and that parents have a way to access that for their children. Thank you.
Thank you. I see that Senator Mizell has a question. Will you yield?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, as you're talking, you had compelling testimony. Thank you for coming back, and I appreciate that you've stuck with this because it's frustrating.
Because it's still happening.
Right.
Other kids.
And I'll talk to Senator Foyle later, but I think it would be helpful to know who is complying and who is not complying. Do you know which school districts are complying?
St. Tammany has created a policy, but and the procedures. I know there's a few other parishes that have adopted the policy, but not the procedures, but none of them have installed cameras.
That's what I mean.
Okay.
I don't
No,
care
not
what
a
they
single
adopt
one
or what they do.
since-
I just
yeah.
want to know who's got a camera up so nobody.
None since this law passed. The ones that, there were some that had cameras already before the law ever became a thing. They were already doing
They
it.
did it
Yeah,
independently.
but since the law passed, none.
And that's something I would really like to track. If they've got, it would be helpful to know where the funds came from, if they were able to generate their own funds for this, or what, because that's going to help everybody else. But until we can say that this percentage of school districts are following in that direction, you're not going to have any. I mean, this is, you know, we've done this with nursing homes. You know, nursing homes were
Right.
told to put cameras in, and I have constituents who call me all the time, and they don't have cameras for whatever, you know, the wiring or whatever baloney. But so that, if we don't track it,
Right, then, yeah.
we're not going to get it. And I believe, so I'll talk to Senator Foyle afterwards, but I just wanted to thank you for what, you know, stubbornness is a valued trait.
I know y'all getting tired of me. but
Yeah.
It's just very important. And the other thing is LDOE, I asked them if they accept complaints, if there would be abuse or if a child is injured, such, and they said no, they don't take those. So when LDOE comes to the table and they ask if they know about it, they say no, but that's because they don't accept the reports. because I myself tried to do an official complaint, and what was sent back was go to your school board, go to your superintendent. If you still don't seek resolution, you need to seek legal counsel.
And have you spoken at a school board meeting?
Oh, yeah. Yes.
Okay, good. Well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you, Senator. All right, introduce yourself and you may proceed, ma'am.
Hi, I'm Jody Rollins. I live in Ascension Parish. When I was young, my parents told me that if anything ever happened to me at school, that I should tell them first. Come to them, and there was nothing I couldn't tell them. And I did. I was getting bullied, and at work, they protected me. When I had my daughter, I told her. It's never an issue. I never dreamed that I would have two sons who are mostly nonverbal and cannot tell me, cannot defend themselves. As Kathleen mentioned, we've had this law now for a year. So many of you have told us you support it, and you all, it was unanimous. Everyone here voted for it unless you were absent that day. But I think what you voted for is the actual camera, what Senator Mizell pointed out. And they're not listening to y'all. And what concerns me as a citizen is I was taught to respect your office. I was taught that lawmakers are good guys and good women and men who should be listened to, and we should be law-abiding citizens. That's how I was raised. And our parish leaders, our school boards and superintendents, they are sort of giving y'all the middle finger, no pun intended. They don't care about the law you've made. I have offered myself and my parish to fundraise. I have offered to donate. Mr. Fields has been in my company before. I own a bolt company, and if I ran my company the way I see my school board being run, I wouldn't be in business anymore. I've offered $10,000 in fasteners to put the cameras in. They simply don't want to do it. I wrote to the DOE also and asked Mr. Brumley, was he seeking funding? Was he looking? I got no response. No, they're just not going to do it. And I don't know, I wonder what good are laws if they don't have to follow them, Senator Fields. I really, are y'all okay with that? I know that I respect the laws you make and I follow them. And the state of Louisiana will send me a bill for 47 cents with a 55-cent stamp if I have a tax error. But the school parishes don't seem to be accountable in any way. And with the amount of ESSER funds, I mean, I've been going to the LDOE dashboard. They have millions of ESSER 2 funds. There is simply no excuse for them to not put these cameras in. You guys have given them a law. It's not perfect, but the intent, wasn't you guys' intent to put the cameras in? My parish, I've been asking them since last year. I've been asking them, what about this? They sent me last week, I got a fundraiser notice for educational supplies. And I said, but y'all got $60 million extra. And I don't have a problem contributing, but nothing is for special education students. Right now, I can't put an Angel Sense, which is a monitor, on my son, or they give us an hour to remove them. I am not allowed to speak to my son's paraprofessional. St. Tammany has a published policy that we're not allowed to speak to them. Our children cannot come home and tell us that they went into the least restrictive environment. My son wasn't going in, neither of them. All we're asking you guys to do is to stand up for the kids. You did that. You gave us a law, and I thought they were going to have to follow it, Senator Fields. I believed that if you told them to do it, they would do it. And they're not listening to you. At this point, I feel like you guys are all we have, because when we go to the police, and I can show you this, they tell us that since our children are nonverbal, they cannot press charges. So what they're telling me is my daughter has a right to police protection because she's typical, and my sons don't. You are all we have. We go to our school boards, they don't care. We go to our superintendents, they don't even know, they hardly even go into a Leap Cadet classroom. My school board members, one of them didn't know what IEP stood for or what IDEA is. You guys are all we have, and if they won't listen to y'all, can't you make them, Senator Mizell? Can you make them listen? Because we have no one else but you guys. And if lawmakers hold no power, then everything my father had ever taught me is not true. He told me that you follow laws, and that's what you do. You be a good citizen and you follow the law. But our school boards have all of our tax money, and I'm being told there's no crime here. They don't have to listen to y'all because of semantics. They've got the money, Senator Mizell. They've got it. We've looked at every dashboard. The policy, they all use the same attorney. Cut and paste St. Tammany's. Save the state millions of dollars. Cut and paste. It's all Hammond and Sills. We all know that. No one will help us. This is it. Kathleen has been at this for years. Please, one of you stand up for our children.
Ms. Rollins, would you yield to a question from Senator Talbot?
Which is really more of a, is there anyone from Department of Education that can come to the table and provide some clarity?
Yes, we'll do that. Senator Talbot, let's get, if it's okay with you, Senator, let's get the last witness, and then we have someone from the Department of Education to address it. Ms. Gillian? And I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. I thought the senator had a question to you. Ms. Rollins, have you finished your comment?
Yeah, I just want to, again, beg all of you. We have been fighting. Kathleen Canino has been fighting for years. We need a champion for these children. I don't know the answer, but I think that y'all all are on our side. And you really are our last hope. There's no one for us to turn to because we've tried the police, we've tried the school boards, we've tried the superintendents. A lot of us have tried the DOE. We need y'all. And I don't want to have to go to my dad and say, well, Dad, it's not true. Because if I have to follow the law, they should have to follow the law. And you guys told them to, Senator Fields. I've been seeing you all of my adult life, and you represent a lot to our community. You know, you're a fixture here. And if you can't make them do it, I have no chance to make them do it. And I wrote to you, and I know you probably get a lot of emails, but it is scary to think that lawmakers have no power. It should not be this way in this country, in this state. My sons should be protected under the same rights as my daughter. And right now, they're not because they can't talk, and that is not their fault. And one of them told me, you know, Ms. Rollins, Jody, you have to get along with us. And I said, no, I don't, because I can't be fired and I can't quit. I know that if any of you could wave a magic wand and my son would be able to talk, I bet you would, Sir Mezzo. I can tell that you're a mom, I bet you would. But you can't do that. But you can give them a voice by telling these parishes your laws matter and they must follow them, and that they need to seek the funding themselves. And if a parent offers to fundraise, take them up on it. I worked for LABI. I was a fundraiser there, and I was really good at it. They won't let me. They won't even respond to my questions about it because they don't want those cameras in. If you have nothing to hide, you hide nothing. Y'all did it. Y'all were our heroes that day. We believe they had to follow them. Please make them, Senator Fields.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your comments before the committee. We're going to now hear from Ms. Gillian.
Good afternoon. My name is Audrey Gillum. I live in Shreveport, Louisiana, in Cattle Parish. I have two daughters, Kira and Kimora. One is nonverbal and one is verbal. My oldest daughter, she has had challenging behavior in the classroom, and sometimes teachers can't control some of the behaviors that she has exhibited. I also work for Cattle School Board. I work for Shreve Island Elementary. I work in the SPED kindergarten and first classroom. Last month, I was attacked by a student. And my principal, she commented, well, why did you allow this child to attack you? I told her I didn't allow him to do anything. He's a child. And then the next day, I got attacked again in the front office. And when I called her that following morning, she told me, I don't understand how you guys are allowing this child to attack y'all and to beat and spit and, bite you. I said, bottom line is, he's a child. He's somebody's child. And if it was my child, I wouldn't want my child to act that way. But he couldn't articulate what he was feeling. He couldn't get past the emotions and how he was carrying on. And then the parish had us to take this class called Handle with Care. And I had to make a decision to use a technique called PRT. The PRT, it's almost like when you're getting handcuffed by a police officer. And I had to use that technique and fill out documentation on that child. And the first thing I did, I thought, this could be my child. Because my child is his age. My child has his disorder. This could happen to my child. This could happen to both of my girls. And when I was pulled in the office, she was, well, are you hurt? What did the doctor say? I said, that's besides the point. If I'm hurt, this child needs help. And we're not getting him enough help. Well, I don't know what to do. But she signed my PRT paperwork, not knowing what she was signing. This lady that I'm talking about, she's been promoted to principal. And we had another incident, and it's same student, ongoing situation, where he was pulled from the classroom, and this same principal struck him in the middle of the hallway. We're at the school fearing for retaliation from her, because this apparently this is a ongoing situation that she's striking students, and no one's doing anything about it. The cameras in the hallway and the corridors are not enough. It's not enough. It really isn't, Senator Fields. It's not enough.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your testimony. Thank both of you for your. I'm sorry. Question by Senator Mizell. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Gillum, is it
Yes.
Gillum? What does PRT stand for?
It's
Is R for restraint?
yes,
I had a feeling.
restraint technique.
Okay. So I just want, when you're telling your story, all I could think about was that I think there's an assumption that the cameras are only going to show guilt, but they're also going to show innocence. And I think
Yes.
there's a lot of clarity when you can see the visual. So I think that point that you made is real important as part of the equation and how we look at this. So I want to thank you for that. And I'm still really curious about what PRT stands for.
It's funny that you said that, because days after that incident, Mom asked, well, who hurt my child?
Right.
And she was not notified that he had to be restrained in that order, or I have no idea if the paperwork even made it to get processed.
Right. Well, thank you. Thank you for making the trip. It's a long way.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Thank you very much, Senator Mizell. Thanks to all three of you for testifying before the committee. Senator Fall, if you would come back up, and if there's someone from Bessie and the Department of Education, Senator Tarbert wanted to see if there was any explanation, particularly from Bessie, as to why some of the districts have not implemented at least the policies. Last year, Senator Fall, we voted on a bill that basically required that each of the governing authorities for each of the public schools, including charter schools, adopt policies relative to the installation and operation of the cameras, and upon the written request of a student, parent, or legal guardian. And this year, you are basically putting in a date to be certain, December 31st, 2022.
That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
So, Senator Tarbett had a question. So, Senator Tarbett.
All right, well, I guess the obvious question is what's the deal? I mean, are they up and running, and if not, why?
Ethan Melanson, Louisiana Department of Education, representing Bessie. I want to start off by saying that Bessie is supportive of this legislation. They put a green card in. The leadership has chosen to support it, just as we did last session as well. When it comes to the implementation of it, because the bill has talked about if funds are available, is where the tricky part comes in. The legislation had asked us to identify funding for it. We have been exploring this for a while. MFP funds are able to be expended for this purpose. We're also able to do like state general appropriation money for this. When we've looked at the federal funding that could potentially pay for this, we've reached dead ends across every avenue we've looked. And so I have Danielle Mitchell here, who works with our finance office. That way we can try to answer those questions when it comes to the federal money, because the ESSER funds have very specific uses that could be done for them at the local level. For instance, they do allow for cameras in one instance. However, the cameras have to be used for contract tracing of COVID-19. And they wouldn't only be able to be put in one classroom, they would have to be installed in every classroom. So that's like one of the ways where potentially you could use money, but it's for that specific purpose. And then there was some discussion around IDEA funds being able to be used for this. And we have not found any way to where we can use IDEA funds, and we have some examples of other states that have attempted to use IDEA funds, and their legislation is a little different each time when other states have done this. But across the board, we have not found a state or a federal program that could allow for the installation of cameras in specific classrooms.
So the ESSER funds, you can use them for cameras to do contact COVID tracing, but it can only be that purpose. So like if you witness a felony on the camera, you can't go tell somebody about it. I mean,
the specifics of that, I'm not sure. Of like if there's other things that the camera catches, if you can use it for that. I know for the installation of the camera, it has to be for COVID contract tracing. And I'll ask Danielle if there's.
But I mean, is that in perpetuity? Is that forever, or is that until the pandemic's over?
It's until the money's done with.
But is it a one-time cost for the installation? I mean, I'm sure there's maintenance, but I mean, there's a one-time cost for the cameras, right?
Yeah, and I'll go ahead and I'll turn over to Danielle, who knows this information a little bit more than me.
And please identify yourself for the record.
Danielle Mitchell with the Louisiana Department of Education, Mr. Chairman. Committee, happy to be here, and again, just want to reiterate that the safety of all students who call Louisiana home is of paramount importance to us. So a few clarifying points on the ESSER funds specifically. So of the total amount that Louisiana received, 90% of that actually flows out directly to our school systems. Of the percentage that we have kept here at the state, half of that is for administration of the program, and then 9.5 of that is our state level activities, and it's at our discretion in alignment with our plan that we submitted to the U.S. Department of Education. So all of our state set aside funds are going to be purposed for the state's response to the pandemic as aligned to our plan. With the 90% that flows out to our school systems, we as the Department of Education cannot dictate how they spend those funds. They do have to be within the allowabilities of ESSER. However, those allowabilities are wide-ranging. And so just a caution here that school systems do have those funds available to them, and we do look at their justifications for every line item that they submit within their budgets to use those funds. So we're happy to review that and work with our school systems to make sure that they are allowable expenses for those funds. So that's specific to the ESSER funds.
Is that allowable? Having the cameras in those rooms, is that one of the things that's allowable?
So the kind of check mark that our grants management team would look for is how does that help prepare for, respond to, and prevent the impacts of COVID-19, which are the purpose of those ESSER dollars.
So ESSER dollars are strictly COVID-19 related allowables?
They are wide-ranging in terms of the system's response, how the system's plan for how they are responding to the impacts of the pandemic. But those are safeguards that our grants management team has put in place.
So how many school districts have put in cameras?
I don't have that exact number with me.
Has anybody?
I can't speak on that exactly if they've installed them. I do know that we've had some school systems request those fundings in their budget.
All right, I may come back later, but I know there's some other questions.
All right, thank you, Senator. Senator Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, twofold. The money that's in for cameras right now is for COVID tracking. Does that include special education classrooms?
Yes, ma'am. It would be for any classroom in the school.
Right. So, is that administered by you, or the school board chooses or selects?
The school system would choose to use their funds for that purpose.
Okay. So it's not guaranteed funding, because the school systems may have other things like they need to purchase for online learning and things like that, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So there's still no real remedy on whether or not.
There's no steady funding stream to be able to pay for this from a federal level.
Okay. So Senator Fall, when you brought this bill, was there a fiscal note before you added in that its basis is as funding is needed? What was the entire fiscal note before that?
It was, I'm going off memory, Senator Jackson, so it's probably dangerous, but I think it was like maybe $6 million statewide, which I thought was actually high in light of, they had a pretty high price per camera, because these are, once again, these are only going to be closed classrooms or self-contained classrooms at the request of parents. But I think the fiscal note was like around $6 million.
But I kind of now remember, how much was it per camera in that note?
High, because we talked about your law office where you had just bought some cameras
yeah,
at
I
a much
remember
lower
that.
price than what was in the fiscal note. I can't remember the value, but it was high.
400, which is real unreasonable for cameras these days.
So
Yeah,
that's sort of-
that's very high per camera.
So that's sort of why I took the tact, and the way we wrote the bill once I took the fiscal note out, it's very broad as far as allowing different funding sources. And at that time, we didn't know with all the federal dollars. It also allows for grants, charitable contributions.
Right.
I mean, it's very broad. If a school system wanted to implement it, we give them all kinds of tools to do it.
Mr. Chairman, if it's appropriate, I would ask the Department of Education to look at the real cost of cameras. You have some COVID money as well. Has it all been allocated?
Danielle.
Yeah, so I can speak to that. Thank you. Danielle Mitchell with the department. Our state set-aside portion, as I mentioned earlier, is the 9.5%. That funding has all been planned for, and that's been a part of our approved plan that was submitted and approved by the U.S. Department of Education last spring or last summer. And all of those monies have been budgeted and dedicated for.
Did it include any cameras?
It did not.
Okay, and I know that as kids are out for COVID-related instances, like I'm raising my nephew now, when he chimes in, he can't see the classroom. And so I'm trying to see why weren't cameras like kind of somewhat of a priority in that, because the child is engaging in online classroom activity because of COVID, right? Let's say contract tracing sends them home for a while. That child is looking at a black screen for the 6 or 7 hours he or she is sitting in that classroom from home. He can't see anything but a black screen. So why wasn't cameras even a part of the COVID money that we sent out, and I'm asking because I just experienced that when he had the contract tracing come home. That child looks at a black screen all day. Now, to the extent that he can pull up his work in Google Classroom, of course, but he's not really engaging. Now, he never had COVID, but he was out the 3 to 5 days of contact. And I thought that was something we would really consider because children are doing online learning while others are in the classroom. And it just seems like that was a valid COVID expense where we could have killed 2 birds in 1 stone, had cameras in the classroom, and for the purpose of what these young ladies and young men are asking, which I think is valid, and also for our children to be engaged, in online learning.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. I think that the value of virtual learning is only as valuable as the interaction is. And actually, the first gear allocation that was made to the state, of that, $32 million was spent, I believe, directly and only on devices, because we knew the priority for equipping our learners with such devices so that those learning experiences were meaningful was extremely important. So we actually flowed those funds out specifically for that purpose. Additionally, with the ESSER 1, the ESSER 2, and the ESSER 3 funds, again, nearly $4 billion of that is sitting in the hands of our local school systems. And within the allowabilities, one of those is like making sure that we are making investments so that continuous learning can happen even when a child doesn't need to be there.
Right,
and
but
so
I think the issue is that we don't want to put the onus on the local school system. So if it's appropriate, Mr. Chairman, I'm sure if it's not, I'm sorry. Yeah, well, we've done that and it still hadn't happened. So I'm looking at something more statewide so we can make sure it's implemented fairly where Ouachita School District has it and then New Orleans School District doesn't, and you have an unlevel playing field for the parents who are advocating. My request would be that the department looks at the reasonableness of how much it would cost to purchase a camera that's put in a corner. It's as simple as that, right? That views the whole classroom, and to that extent, for special education classrooms, and that's what I want to make before I make this request. The children are only, but inclusion puts them in every classroom.
That's right. So we limited it to self-contained classrooms because those are situations where there's a good chance that none of the students are verbal.
For self-contained classrooms only. What would that cost be to put a camera in? And if anywhere, where can you locate that funding in your budget? I have the chairman of finance, so I know not to try to put an amendment of an unfunded mandate on there. You've taught me that, Mr. Chairman. So I would make that request to report back to the committee at the next committee meeting if Mr. Chairman is okay with that.
Depends on which chairman are you talking to.
You. This
you-
next committee
'cause
meeting. I know you both are sitting there, but I'm asking permission of the chairman
Absolutely.
of education since I'm asking them to report back to us at the next
Absolutely.
committee meeting.
Absolutely.
We'll be happy
Will
to
you
do
report
that, Senator.
back to the committee?
Statewide,
Have you
self-contained,
concluded,
yes.
Senator Jackson?
And I know I was long-winded, but I was trying to solve the
not
problem
at
in my
all.
head at the same time of making the request.
Not at all. Now we go to the chairman of education, Senator White.
No, that
Chairman.
would be finance. I quit if I'm chairman of education. Okay, so the way I understand, Ms. Danielle, we got 3 tranches of ESSER money. I mean, during those times, I was on the phone with my staff at 2 o'clock in the morning because they were listening to the congressional hearings and what we can use money for. I don't know a lot about the ESSER money because they didn't send it to the state. They made straight line appropriations to the local school districts, just like they made straight line appropriations to many of the cities, parishes, and to many of the universities, most of the universities. When they make that straight line appropriation, folks, we can't tell them what to do with it. The only time we control the money is when they send it to the state. And the state finance chairman and the state appropriations committee chairman in the House, we send the money out in appropriation bills. There's several different bills. I don't know how much money they have, But if you say there's $6 million needed for these cameras, for these special classrooms with these children with special needs, did I hear $3.5 billion was appropriated, straight line? It's not a lot of money. I think that maybe the Department of Education should maybe, if you think that's an important investment for those children and their parents, I'm not beating on you. I'm just saying, I'm not going to tell you what to do, but it seems like a reasonable ask to me. $6 million out of $3.5 billion. I don't want my member down there beating on me for $6 million when they should have the $6 million, okay? Because we have other needs and we don't control that $3.5 billion. We send out about $6 billion in MFP already to the locals. So just see if y'all can come up with something and come back to us in a couple of weeks and let us know how we are on this.
Yes, sir. And with the ESSER fundings that went straight to the local districts, of that, we also cannot dictate how they spent it. So if that would be just us requesting them that we think this is an important bill, which we've shared with, that this should be funded through it, we can't force, as you said, we can't force them to spend
And we
it.
do a lot of things like they want $1,500 pay raise this year. So I would ask them, we're going to try to get you $1,500. Try to get this dollars, a little bit of this money spent on these cameras. They're not real expensive.
Will do, sir.
All right, thank you.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
know you don't like to hear me say that, but
Have you concluded, Chairman?
I'm done.
All right, thank you, Chairman White. Mr. Malone, I think you understand what the chairman was saying.
I do.
And hopefully we can get, this is Senator Fall's second time coming to the committee with the same bill. And we need to get this behind us. It doesn't cost so much money, and it's time to get this done. All right, Senator Mizell.
Sorry. I was afraid I wasn't flashing. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to go back when you used the term at their discretion. I think his bill made it required. I think that there seems to be two conversations going on. It's like, can we nicely ask you to take money and use it for what the law's already said you're supposed to be doing? And that's where it's I'm in conflict with this. But I think, when I looked up, staff kindly gave us the statute. And the statute, the first sentence says, the governing authority of each public elementary and secondary school shall adopt policies. So we don't have cameras. Do we have policies? Do we?
Not everywhere. That's why I'm bringing this bill, because I'm giving them a deadline.
But we're
now.
still asking them to adopt policies,
Still-
not to tell them to install cameras.
Well, the bill will tell them they have to adopt
Install.
policies. And if funding's available, it's very broad, that you should then put cameras in as well. It's been a push. I wasn't planning to come back with this bill, because when I filed the bill last year, I assumed that the school districts at the very least would at least set the policy, and then we would work on the funding piece this year. But there's another step now. I'm taking another step to put a deadline. Let's finish the policy, and I'm still going to work on the funding piece. But I want to get the policy deadline in place.
And I think it would be really interesting to see who has the policies in place based on the bill from last year, because there are wealthy districts and there are poorer districts,
Right.
but nobody has a camera. So, I'm trying to understand if it really truly is money, then the wealthier districts don't have the justification. So,
There are some cameras in place in some schools before I even brought the bill. I'm just not sure what's been done since the bill. I have to get with the Department of Education to get those stats. I get anecdotal information, but I don't have hard data yet.
yeah, I look forward to that. But thank you, Senator Foyle. Thank you,
Yeah,
Mr.
myself.
Chairman.
All right, thank you, Senator Mizell. Let's go to Senator Mills. Senator Mills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I don't want to rain on the parade because we all know this is important and would be a great add. We were in this same room a year ago, and my recollection of it was that we ran into enough kind of hard stops that we did not mandate the installation of a camera. We had concerns about the cost, we had concerns about the ability, and that we in fact did not mandate the installation of cameras. We did mandate the writing of a policy.
Right.
Strictly that. And we are now giving them a deadline by which date you should write a policy.
That's right.
That's all we've demanded that they do. So no, I don't want the audience to think that we ever said, y'all go install a camera. We want them to, but if you don't tell them to, they're not going to do it. And so I think, you're going to have to bone up your language before we have a mandate.
So I was trying to be sensitive, about unfunded mandates last year, but I'm having to come back.
It's a problem today
Right,
too. Yeah,
right.
even
So
though
I'm
there's
having to
money everywhere, ARP money everywhere. I mean, we got to solve that. So the audience needs to realize there's not a command for any particular school to install a camera, only to write a policy, and that's all we've successfully done so far.
Unless funding becomes available, and that's arguable.
And I question whether that mandate to, even if you had the money, is there. So let's look at it.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Mills.
All right, thank you, Senator Mills. All right, Mr. Malonson, if you can report back to us next week, I want to know if you can report to us Senator Jackson's request. Also, give us a report as to what schools have implemented policies since the bill was passed, and also do some research with your legal team and see if the money can, in fact, be spent for the installation of those cameras. And you've heard from the chair of that big committee called Finance.
We were there on Monday.
And see if you all can find the funding for Senator Fall's bill. Mr. Mike Falk would like to be heard. Senator, let's hear from him, and then I'm going to read some cards into the record. We have 5 more bills to be heard, so we're going to start moving pretty quickly now. Mike Falk from the Louisiana Association. Okay. Okay. He's going to waive. We also have Danielle Mitchell with the Louisiana Department. She's already spoken. Susan Susie Labrie, representing Self, do not wish to be heard, but in support of the bill. Bridget Nealon would Stand for Children, in support, do not wish to be heard. Kelly Monroe, and in support, do not wish to be heard. Ashley McReynolds, in support, do not wish to be heard. Cynthia Miller, in support, do not wish to be heard. Julie Foss, in support, do not wish to be heard. Lathitha Reed, in support, do not wish to be heard. Kristen Reed, in support, do not wish to be heard. Christina Martin, in support, do not wish to be heard. Katie Carusi, in support, do not wish to be heard. Angela Herman, in support, do not wish to be heard. And I think this is Minnie, I think it's RANON. Okay. In support, do not wish to be heard. And also in support, here to provide information is Ethan Malonson, who we've already heard from. Although do not wish to, and also Katie Cochran, in support, do not wish to be heard. Ashley Artis, in support, do not wish to be heard. And Karen Artis, in support, do not wish to be heard. Members, you've heard the testimony on Senate Bill 45, which has been, did we amend your bill?
Did.
Which has been amended. What's your pleasure? Senator Jackson moved that we report Senate Bill 45 as amended. Any objections? Hearing no objections, that bill is reported as amended.